Shout out to our sponsors at IconBet. Open source, decentralized gaming, no deposits, play straight from your wallet. IconBet, made by the players, for the players. Eye on Icon is proudly supported by Icon Nation and the Icon community.
Okay, so look, let's kick things off. So today's session, again, always a reminder, everyone, please, if you have questions, speak up. You can ask away. You have Parrot9 with us and Scott, and obviously with Balance being a DAO, today's subject, thought from a community's perspective, let's chat about DAOs, not just Balance, but more, I'm guessing a few questions that have come through are very much directed about Balance and certain topics around the DAO, which is great. Thank you, Steve, who put a ton of questions on the forum. However, overall, though, I'm keen to get Lisa, Peter, Scott, all of your views on currently where we are positioned, but also some insights on DAOs that you particularly have found interesting or have been extremely successful in the model you'd like to see followed, etc. So really getting that point of view as well. So before we jump in, I thought, in case there's someone going, DAO, what the hell is he talking about? Who wants to tackle the breakdown of what a DAO is? I should really direct it. Scott, go.
Yeah, I guess I'll happen. I mean, a DAO is definitely a pretty loose definition these days. This whole industry is brand new, let alone the terminology we use. I feel like there's a new term coming out like every couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, a DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, and it essentially allows for all the rules that would typically be written onto paper contracts and signed by participants of an organization. It allows for all those rules to be programmed into a smart contract and controlled, however really the DAO sees fit. You could have elected people that have power over the DAO. You could have one token, one vote, which is what Balance does, and what a lot of DAOs do is just the more tokens you have, the more votes you get. But yeah, I mean, from a high level, it's just a way to govern a product in any kind of organization. DAOs can be applied to many different things, but it's a way to govern and manage something using blockchain technology and make decisions.
So then Balance. So I guess why was Balance and OMM? I guess I can lump them together. Why was the thought process around creating a DAO, going down the DAO route? Was there any particular reasoning around it, or
for Balanced? Was that the question?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, I think it was just like the ease of getting things set up. I pretty much just like came up with the idea for Balanced. I wrote the white paper. I showed it to like people who I felt would add value to the project, and I said, "Do you guys want to work on this together?" And we did, and then we split up the DAO that way, and kind of got started with the initial workers on the product. I mean, honestly, from like a what's it called? Like a regulatory standpoint, it's good as well to operate that way with no central point of failure. If the Balanced team were to be compromised in any way or get hit by a bus is kind of what I'm talking about, like that kind of stuff, the show could still go on. And I think that's really important, especially for these types of products.
Okay, great. I don't know how many times in my day job I've been given that example. If you get hit by a bus, who would pick up your work? I'd be like, oh, get dark really quick. But it's a great example. Okay, so that's great. Now, I guess I'm going to go around the room here. So, Peter and Lisa, I'm keen to get your insights as well. So, currently, what do you feel is one of the most successful DAOs out there at the moment in the blockchain space that you look at and go, this is where it would be great if we end up this successful and model ourselves in that way?
Yeah, that's actually quite a hard question. I think Scott touched on this before, that because DAOs operate as a plutocracy, that's not the same as a meritocracy. A successful business usually runs on a meritocracy of ideas, And just because someone has money doesn't mean they necessarily have good ideas. So in terms of like an example of a good DAO, I haven't
found one yet.
Yeah, not yet. But we're looking.
Yeah, just to kind of add on that, it makes it tough. Like one of the things with DeFi and blockchain, like everyone wants their privacy and stuff, but which I do agree with. But in order to get away from a plutocracy and move more towards a meritocracy, I do think there needs to be some type of way to identify one person, one group, one entity. You don't have to say who they are, but a way to prevent civil attacks, essentially. So that way, we can move more towards valuing individual people rather than just like, oh, this guy has 10 times the amount of tokens as me. Maybe that's only 1% of his portfolio, but it's, 99% of mine. But, he gets a larger voice, even though he cares less just because he has more money than me. I do think that's kind of one of the things that no one really talks about when it comes to DAOs. And it's not like Balance is doing it any different. I think like what's good about another important factor in in DAOs is how the tokens are distributed, which is why I think like this is like a really important phase for Balanced, and why I do like the idea of putting more Balanced tokens into the DAO fund so it can be more strategic about where those tokens end up. Because right now what's happening is like the early users are getting like 70% of Balanced tokens. Now that's definitely going to have some positive effects. Could also have some negative effects where, maybe the people who are coming here are just, trying to farm Balanced tokens, dump them and leave. But ultimately, the reason I think it's a net positive overall is, doing this no pre-mine token distribution to our early users, even for the people who are farming and dumping Balanced tokens, those Balanced tokens end up in the hands of our dedicated liquidity providers. So, those people, at least it's getting the tokens in the hands of the people who are dedicated and do believe in the long term of the project. And I think that's what's important. If we're going to try and limit the downside of a plutocracy, at least trying to do as fair possible token distribution would kind of limit the downside there. But it's still not perfect, of course.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think a lot of it does come down to education for the community. The people who have invested more typically have done more research, and just coming from an agency background, and in an agency, your cheapest client is going to cause the most headaches. And I find it's typically the same that your cheapest user is going to be the most demanding. So it's identifying the right groups of people and really focusing on them and making sure they're happy.
So I tend to agree. So I guess, Scott, maybe not enough time has passed, but I mean, in the current timeline, if you were to reflect back, and I guess these are your personal views, not of what you're trying to for the DAO or anything like that, but if you were to reflect back, would you change anything about the distribution process, or what would you fundamentally change around how you founded the DAO if you had to recreate Balance right now?
That's a great question. I definitely would, put more tokens into the DAO fund for the reason we just described. Like, let's say we really want to target a specific group of people to join the DAO. Like, the way that we can do that is by taking some Balance tokens from the DAO fund and incentivizing some activity that targets those users. Maybe it's a hackathon. Maybe we want to incentivize front-end developers, and we could have a contest to who can do the best implementation of this new feature, and then give those Balance tokens to that person. So trying to have more Balance tokens retained by the DAO for future initiatives by the DAO is definitely something that I kind of overlooked in the initial construction of the allocations. And I would say, I was just talking about this on Telegram. Initially I was thinking you want to incentivize revenue generating behavior. So borrowers generate a lot of revenue for Balanced because they originate loans and there's the origination fee there. But I do think we were a little heavy handed on the rewards there. I mean, even right now with the Balanced token price the way that it is, you get paid 100%, over 100% yield on your debt that you borrow, which is a very weird dynamic. right? Like that's not, MakerDAO is operating great where people borrow from MakerDAO with no incentive and they pay money to borrow from MakerDAO. That's how borrowing normally works. You have to pay for leverage. So I think we went a little heavy-handed on the borrowers and maybe could have put more into the DAO fund. Would probably be, and definitely incentivizing balance token stakers. That was something that we overlooked as well. But I think that'll pass pretty easily. Most of everything that I just said seems like general consensus amongst the community.
Yeah. So when you say incentivizing stakers, is that more from as an encouraging to stake, or more from once governance starts to come into the picture, how we get people voting? What do you mean by that?
It's encouraging people to stake and essentially incentivizing people to support the platform longer term is how I view. That's what staking is. You're I'm staking, I'm participating in governance, and I believe in this platform. So that's kind of what you're expressing when you stake a balance token. And that's what, so we should incentivize that with some sort of allocation.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, just a reminder, everyone who's joined, you can ask questions. I did have someone request to speak. By the time I went to approve, they dropped off and now they're out of the chat. Hope it didn't that. But yeah, again, if anyone wants to ask, please ask away. Otherwise, I'm just rattling off some questions I'm creating on the spot and from one community member. So I think I'll quickly jump into some of Steve's questions because it's very much granular and focuses on particular unique aspects. So his first question is, what are your thoughts regarding the minimum percentage of governance token ownership to launch a change request / use of DAO fund vote? So
I get
what is the percentage?
No, I get what the question is. Let's see. I was thinking around 10 basis points of circulating supply. So that would be, what is it? Yeah, I don't know what I don't have the numbers offhand. Let me see. I could check it out. Does anyone have that by any chance? But I'm thinking 10 basis points of circulating supply. I think compound requires 1%, which I think is pretty heavy. And then, so that's kind of a pretty straightforward question there.
Yeah, great. Okay. Then leading on from that, could there be a pre-vote pool in which smaller investors can pull together to launch a vote?
Someone else could build that smart contract, no problem. You could allow a smart contract to request a vote rather than just a user account, but someone would have to build that. That could be something on top of balanced, essentially. It's a governance pool that for smaller token holders that all want to vote together and propose votes together.
But that's half the beauty, isn't it? So once stuff like this starts to go live, people can build on top to make it. I've seen something similar happen, and we're leading into that with the Unista voting, because essentially you could delegate the votes, and obviously a fundraiser had A16 had majority of the tokens, so they were trying to pull together all the distributions to outvote. Anyway, let's come to that. But that's comes back to this particular question. I guess there's nothing stopping someone from creating that to enable that for small investors to pull together and push vote on something together. Or even on that note, once the forums and stuff are built, a pre-vote could take place in a similar manner, just in the forums, to gauge interest from balance holders if they would go for a potential whatever the pitch is in that scenario.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and you could pretty much just try and, maybe a larger token holder just reads your proposal. Maybe you don't have enough personally. Maybe he just takes it upon himself to propose it themselves. Yep,
fair enough. Okay. Okay, quite a lot more have joined. Again, everyone, thanks for joining. Just if you want to ask something, please ask away. Otherwise, I'll keep firing questions. Lisa, Peter, please just chime in. I never forget about you all, but I tend to get caught up in making sure I read the questions correctly.
Scott usually has better answers, so
yeah, we're more than happy to delegate.
Nice.
I'll come picking on you all soon. Don't worry. So the next one Steve's asked is, could a tokenized physical asset platform, real estate, precious metals, be governed as a DAO given the complexities with audit, storage, security, notary services? What are your thoughts on that?
Sorry, could what be governed by a DAO?
So could a tokenized physical asset platform, so in more, at the moment we've got crypto assets, but if we start taking into account like real estate, precious metals, and things like that, could they be governed via DAO? I guess. How would you?
You'd have them.
I guess from my point of view,
you'd have them be kind of separate endeavors. So like Balance, for example, could Balance token holders could. All right, let's just take a step back. Let's say that some company, startup bank wants to issue mortgages on the blockchain, tokenized mortgages, and they do all the underwriting and they handle all of the collection of mortgage payments and all that kind of stuff. That would be one company, right? That'd be like the startup company, startup bank, and then Balance token holders could come up with a proposal and be like, hey, we found this startup bank. They issue mortgages on the blockchain. We want to take those mortgages as collateral. We want to trust this group. Then everyone could decide, all right, we want to trust this group, and then we add those mortgages as collateral on Balanced. So Balanced itself would still be a DAO, but they'd be accepting collateral from a centralized company.
Yeah. So
you always need an underwriter.
For more context,
like, you need someone to value and appraise homes. Like, you're not going to have a DAO token that incentivizes that or makes that trustworthy.
Exactly. So for context, just like in Maker, anything that gets accepted in Maker aren't going and recreating it and managing that component. It's just someone else is doing, and it gets vetted and ensured it's right for Maker to, I guess, use as collateral to mint DAI, etc. It would work similarly for Balance. We wouldn't actually manage that component. We'd look to other parties and get it approved, etc. Right. Cool. No, that's really good, Scott. That was a good breakdown. Okay, so look, I've asked this question. However, this is a bit of a different take on it. So what are the most important lessons you've learned from following the evolution of other DAO platforms? So I guess we talked about Balance. If you could re-look at things, what you would change. Have you had that view when you've been observing like Synthetics or some of the other DAOs that exist?
Yeah, I'd say there's just 2 points that I'd want to make there. One is on the something Dakey actually shared with me recently. He was doing some research for OMM and was reading a lot of stuff on Compound's evolution of their governance. Compound Finance, they were actually one of the first to offer yield farming and giving out tokens for incentives that have control of governance and stuff like that. And one thing that one key takeaway I felt that was important is, being flexible in your metrics, like what your base interest rates are, where your incentives are going, taking a look at historical data and saying like, all right, we should change this, we should change that. Being nimble when it comes to making decisions and making changes and not being so rigid. So I think that's an important takeaway and something I'm excited to see once we get all this set up for Balanced is like, if someone wants to vote to change token holder allocations, we should be open to that. Not token holder, like the allocations of inflation, like of the rewards. Like that's something we need to be nimble with. If we feel that like right now is a really bad time to originate debt because of market sentiment, then we should put stronger incentives to originate debt. And we should move it away from, staking maybe or something, balance token. Like these things need to be constantly evolving is one of the key takeaways. And then another one that was really important from the Yearn community was what happens when you have founders and team members that aren't incentivized properly, where, he started the Wi-Fi token, YFI, and did a complete fair launch, offered it, 100% of tokens went to users and early farmers. And then he pretty much was like, getting everyone's like, oh, like this feature, that feature, can you build this? Can you build that? And he's like, you know what? I have like absolutely no upside in this. I'm either going to start building something else or there needs to be like a team allocation. And they ended up minting like 25% extra supply to give to the team, which was obviously very controversial. So making sure that like the team is incentivized with a healthy amount to make sure they're in it for the long haul, I think is important as well, as we've seen from two prior examples.
I just
agree.
want to jump in on that as well, because I think like all DAOs have some centralized aspects to them. Like, for example, you can't put buy limits on your token, or you can't make it, one wallet per vote, because then people are just going to create a whole bunch of wallets. So any mitigations you put in place can easily be gamed. And so in some aspects, a lot of these DAOs, I feel like it's only decentralized theater. But in saying that, that doesn't mean that the user has no power in this. In fact, it's actually quite the opposite, because you look at something like Steemit, where Justin Sun did his hostile takeover, and the users left in droves, and no one wants to lose their users. Like, if you lose your users, there's no point in using the platform. You lose your network effect. And so I think that's where decentralization actually has a lot of power, when the users start acting as a union.
I think, Peter, that's a great one, because in the end, the way that ended was they forked it and removed him out of the picture in the fork, his holding, so he couldn't have a say in the way the protocol evolved. I believe that's what transpired with that, and it's quite interesting how the DAO tackled that problem where centralization was going to take over, essentially.
Yeah. Be also wary of angry users and numbers.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a great point. And one thing that is great that aligns users, like compared to a non-DAO platform, is like every one of these users who's getting involved in voicing their opinion, they're almost guaranteed that they're balance token holders. And that gives them some alignment. Like in a traditional product, maybe like one group of people is upset about one feature, another group of people is upset about another feature. There's not as much alignment necessarily. Maybe they're just agreeing or disagreeing, but on different subjects. But like when it comes down to a DAO, you can be sure that like the focus of discussion is going to be accruing as much value as possible for token holders. So there can be more alignment on decision making.
Yeah, everyone's fighting for the same thing at the end of the day.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Donnie, I believe you stepped up.
Fez,
have you got a question? Hey.
Yeah, just a quick question. I see there's a lot of like community leaders within of ICX here in the chat room, thankfully. Scott, could you just walk us through how easy it is to start a DAO? If you use what kind of framework you use, like if you use like Aragon or Gnosis? And finally, last question, do you think it'd be easier to ask for funding in the CPS as a DAO instead of like as a sole entity?
Yeah, I mean, for your second question, I feel like that's, I don't know, I feel like that could go either way. I feel like it comes more down to the product market fit or the necessity of the, public utility that you want to build, rather than whether it's a DAO or not. I think DAO adds some, an interesting component to it. But I wouldn't say that would be like a make or break decision maker for me when I'm voting on the CPS stuff. And then your first question was what again? What was your first question, Donnie?
My first question was like, if you can just walk us through it, like if you were trying to teach me how to start a DAO, like how difficult is it? Like, how do you get started? Just a quick explanatory, like little, talk. Sorry, an explanation of how you got started. Again, I'm sorry for those of us who are looking to maybe start a DAO of our own.
Yeah, definitely. It's actually, I'm not going to say it's the easiest thing in the world. I mean, you definitely need some blockchain developers on the team that are excited and, interested in working on it. But there's that token score factory, which is currently being developed as a CPS project. I believe Ibris sponsored it and is possibly working on it as well. And token score factory is something that will allow non-developers to deploy their own token. But in the end, like, you could call it a DAO, but for things to be binding and to be handled at the smart contract layer, which is really the ultimate goal, you do need some solid blockchain developers. So I think that's kind of a prerequisite to really creating a robust DAO. And from like a design standpoint, of like how it's going to function, yeah, there's a lot of things that you can build off of that are already in existence, like you said.
Alrighty. I guess I'll ask another question. I'm sorry about that, Fez. My last question was, today we had our first for our first, I guess the first publicly approved LLC for a DAO. I think it's called Crypto Fed, and in Wyoming. What do you think about that? Is that is that a positive, a negative? Is it like a non-event for like DAOs all over the world? Yeah, so I don't even know if you heard of it, but yeah, today we had I read a news article that we had our first fully licensed or not fully licensed, but yeah, there's an LLC. It's called Crypto Fed, and it's like, yeah, you got approved to be an LLC.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. I mean, I would be really curious to see how this actually works. I mean, I feel like there's got to be someone's name on that LLC, not just like something DAO and, whoever. I'd be really curious. I mean, I've heard of a LAO, Legal Autonomous Organization. I think they were trying some stuff like that in Vermont. I remember I saw someone speaking on that at DevCon Osaka back, I think that was 2019. And, but in terms of like its importance, definitely think having legal like liability protection for people who work on DAOs is important. So I am looking forward to more legal frameworks around that rather than having to like set up a traditional LLC.
Just on that one, Andrew, thank you for also he's stepping up to ask a question. Before I throw it to you, just one of the points, Donnie, you raised about going to CPS for DAO funding, and I know, Scott, you touched on it. Unfortunately, we recorded an episode with TJ around CPS, and one of the conversations was utilizing the CPS fund to kickstart a DAO, which is something we'd spoken about in the background and found to be a very interesting way of changing up how we perceive what can be pitched in CPS. So unfortunately, we never threw that episode out there. Sorry, TJ, wasted your time. But I did. I actually love that, and this is the ultimate part. One of the challenges with CPS is PREPs approving. So yes, you could go for funding, but ultimately you would have to have a very good setup with clear goals on what you're going to achieve for everyone to kind of approve this initial funding to the DAO, Treasury, etc. It is an interesting use case and something that if there's people on here that do have blockchain devs and have that skill set, shouldn't be discouraged. If you have an idea, that is one of the ways you can get funding via CPS. So it's an interesting take.
Yeah, it is. It is an interesting take. I would also be curious to hear what Pete and Lisa have to say. But
yes,
I don't. I actually don't like talking about the CPS decision-making process as much. Although there could be benefits. My goal for the CPS has always been for it to be like, there's however many registered PREPs. There's like 30, maybe like high 20s, and I just kind of want it to be a like whatever ends up getting approved should be like just a representation of like 30 individual opinions and consensus wins, rather than having 30 people sit around and talk about like what they think they should vote for and, kind of creating policies and guidelines. I kind of have my own thoughts on how I vote on the CPS and ICX Station does, and I never talk to any other PREPs about it. I just kind of get it done. And that's kind of my personal opinion on it. I'm not saying everyone has to do that, but that's how I like thinking about the CPS, is just an aggregation of opinions of various different network participants, and we'll just kind of see what happens. So if those network participants, 30 people, the consensus is that, most people think that a DAO should be funded, like bootstrapped with the CPS, then that's what the will of the CPS is. That's kind of how I think about it. But just my personal opinion, I do think bootstrapping businesses on our network is definitely a good use of money.
Love it. Thank you, Scott. That gives me an idea for the next community session. Okay. Andrew, go, fire away. Your moment. Please tell me you wanted to ask a question.
Your moment.
Okay, maybe there's an answer. That's okay. So we'll. Oh, yes.
Sorry. I was just going to go back to what Donnie was saying initially with the frameworks on creating a DAO. When you look at the smart contracts, it's just code underneath it all.
Okay, it's on mute now. I'll keep moving. Andrew, let me know. Just speak up when you've sorted audio issues. So I'll carry on with Steve's questions as well. I'm keen to get Andrew's question. That sounded interesting. So I made mention of this earlier, but this is what Steve's asked. What are your thoughts about centralization? How do you avoid it? For example, large DAO funds are attractive targets for whales slash VCs. And we've seen this with Uniswap and A16Z. So I guess if I were to rephrase this question, given our treasury starts to build, what are your thoughts on protecting it versus, say, a huge whale who could kind of put through something to get voted and push it through to suck up those treasury funds and do what they please with it? And what are your views around this? Safeguards? What are your thoughts around some safeguards, etc.?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, I don't necessarily think that's a huge concern. I mean, I think another way of phrasing that is like, should we be concerned that, large, high quality, intelligent institutional investors want to buy a lot of our tokens? And like, that doesn't sound like a concern to me at all. That sounds like a good thing, that you accrue a lot of value to your protocol. Other large investors that are well respected see value in it, and then they want to join the governance decision making process and buy a lot of tokens from the market. That sounds great. I'm totally into it. And that's why I think, a large DAO fund is a good thing. In terms of being a honeypot for attackers, I think what you can do, what I like to do is kind of, I think 67% approval rating for anything is quite difficult to get. If you have 67% of the network is malicious and wants to steal the money from the DAO fund, I think you're kind of failed anyway. So that's kind of my perspective on it. 67% is a tough bar. One other barrier you can do is have 67% of tokens, while also having some other type of minimum thing, like maybe 67% of wallets with 1,000 tokens or more also must approve it, something like that. So you can prevent the Sybil attack in some way, but also try to get like a one entity, one vote kind of opinion going, kind of like a Senate and House.
Yeah,
that's kind of an American perspective, considering I modeled it off the Senate and House. So maybe give Parrot 9 an opportunity to shed some light on that as well.
Don't really have too much to add, to be honest. I do think having another option in there. So we do have, there is a minimum requirement of 20% of stake balance tokens have to vote. If we also had something that required a set number of wallets to be voting, maybe that could help to reduce the opportunity for just a couple of big whales to go in and vote for things. If you're showing that it's more distributed by requiring a lot more people to vote on something, that could help to limit that. But yeah, don't really have too much insight on the voting side of things.
Sorry, Lisa. Thank you for that. I was just approving. I think Geodude, if you have a question, Geo, please fire away. You're muted.
Nope, just joining in late.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Cool. So Andrew has had audio issues, so he has sent me his question, and I think it's a good one. Let me just ask it. So it was around the score contract code protected in a DAO. His question was, at the end of the day, the owner of the contract can change the code. What has Balance done to protect against this? So from what I understand at the moment, the way the contracts are deployed, it's not kind of you burn the keys, etc., like that they make a big deal on Ethereum. In Icon 1, you're still the owner. The team is still essentially the owner of the contract and could change that.
No, that's actually the same, regardless of whether you're on Ethereum or not, like Ethereum or Icon. So what he's referring to maybe is Icon has upgradable smart contracts, which is more of a convenience than anything else, because almost every single popular Ethereum dApp is going to use a framework that allows for upgradability, but they just use interface contracts, which means like all users will like send their transaction to an interface contract, which will pass the transaction to a different contract. And then like, the devs can just swap out like the final destination contract in Ethereum. But on Icon, we just don't need that interface contract because we can just upgrade it if we need to. And in terms of burning keys, that is why it's important no matter which blockchain you build on. If once the DAO is like fully set up and operating on smart contracts, you can burn the keys to the whether it's the interface contract on Ethereum, or you could burn it to the governance contract of your DApp on Icon. And then from there, there's no possibility of changing things. We're still building out like the robust decentralized governance, but we could do something similar as well. And Icon 2.0 makes it even easier because we can have smart contracts that are owned by other smart contracts, and that's like another layer of defense there.
I just want to jump
Excellent.
back in on that. Like, this is what I was getting with before, that, you know, all DAOs have some centralized aspects to them, you know, whether they can just upgrade the contract. But if, you know, a better question might be is, you know, if a vote got approved and we didn't deploy the changes from the vote, that's pretty much going to create another Steemit type situation where you're going to piss off a lot of community members, and you risk losing, you know, all of the goodwill and, you know, all of your users that you've built up to that point. So you still kind of have to abide by the vote, whether, you know, no matter who's implementing, you know, the actual changes of it.
No, that's great. Yeah, good, excellent point, Peter. Okay, so then I'll ask this particular question. It's probably around the same, but a little different. Same, but different. How have the different teams / DAOs set up admin keys, multi-sigs, things like that? Are they final, or any changes planned? And an example Steve's given here is Balance has several teams working on the platform. Does every team have one sig? Multiple people know the SIG within the same team. So I guess to come back to it, is there currently a multi-SIG or something set up for the DAO fund?
Sorry, guys, definitely not going to share how security is broken up. I think that would be pretty reckless.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Okay, I'll move on to the next question then. But I think it's more, Scott, it's more around what kind of security is set up from, because that's quite a common question for DAOs, right? How is the funds and things set up? So I think that's what it was being alluded to.
Yeah, I just don't see the benefit of sharing that information publicly.
Okay. So the next one, are there any safety precautions within the existing platform? So like freezing of funds, which are, as an example, freezing of funds which are considered centralized. Any plans to change these in the future towards more decentralization?
Honestly, I'm not exactly sure what the granular safety, not safety, but what controls we have with the admin keys. But there is likely, I think there's something we can do to kind of freeze everything if there was like some sort of major attack right now, and then in the future we can give that switch to what's it called, to the governance contract.
Okay.
So like the long-term plan is essentially to have all admin functions of all contracts callable by the governance contract, and then have the governance contract owned by the balance token contract. And that would be the long-term vision there.
Cool. No, excellent. Thank you. So the last question, and this one, I think your post just today has answered it. Where will potential votes be discussed for feedback before the vote is launched? On the Icon community forum? Will the teams create a separate forum for the website within the app, Telegram, Discord? But today you tweeted out the forum, Balance forum, and the way it's looking and how it's coming along. So I'm guessing that is kind of the answer. That is exactly where all these kinds of discussions and proposals will be put up for the community input before it's put up to vote.
Right. Yep. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So look, that's all the questions I have. Again, I'm just going to throw out to the community. If there's anyone out there who wants to ask a question, please fire away. From my end, I just thought of one final question, and as quick as I thought of it, it's gone. But yeah, look, that's all I had. Any closing out words from Peter, Lisa, on your side of things?
I think we're good from our end.
Yep, same here. Yeah, definitely. Appreciate your time, Fez, putting these things together. Glad to see more community members joining, and happy to continue doing this.
Yeah, definitely.
Was it
Excellent.
about gas
No.
stations?
No talk of gas stations this time.
Actually, a gas station DAO via CPS funding sounds intriguing. Let's discuss. No, look, I really appreciate constantly, Scott, Lisa, Peter, you're giving up your time to engage with us, the community, and we can fire away any questions we please, which is great. Everyone on the call, like, if you have ideas, please send DMs or even tweet it out, tag us in there what you want to see conversations revolve around with the team, with the various teams, or if you want a particular team on here, please let us know and we can make the arrangements. That's the whole point of these sessions. And please feel free to step up and ask some questions as well. So, but if no one has anything, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Peter, for jumping on. Some great questions were asked today as well. Again, I found it a very insightful conversation, and it's good to hear, Scott, some of the things you would change. And actually, I've just now, before we close off, I've just remembered what I wanted to ask was around, and it's gone. That's fine. Let's close it out. Thank you, everyone.
Take it easy. All right. See you, everybody.
Take care all. Bye.